Yeah, I get right to the racks. Then I make that shit back. Run up on me, get shot in the back.
It's Jerry in a beautiful video. Sculpture man back in the so you got today we got the Latin Kings, Chicago's most infamous gang, Holmes.
Oh, wow.
Highly requested, my dude.
Yeah, we from New York, and there's a lot of Latin Kings in New York. They used to run wild in the Bronx, like a lot of them everywhere. Had people shook.
Are there still Latin Kings today like that?
Yeah.
I don't really hear about them though.
Deep too.
Word. Okay.
You know what I'm saying? But if it's your first time tuning in, subscribe to the channel. Request the content.
And then we react.
And then we react accordingly. So it's very simple. Follow him on Instagram, Javen TV. Follow me on Instagram, Pops Reacts. We got a Discord below that's not lit. You know what I'm saying?
Is that right to it?
No more talk.
To another episode of Swamp Stories. For this episode, we head to Chicago. We
Chicago!
explore one of the most infamous groups that has never been covered.
Nah, word.
But before we get into it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new. You can also follow the Instagram page as well. So let's get into it. Chicago, Illinois. For the past 10 years or so, everyone has had one image in their mind. Whether it's Chief Keef, Lil Durk, 63rd, GD, BD, Zach TV, King Von, G Herbo, or Polo G. Okay, that's more than one, but the point is that Chicago has been synonymous with drill music and absolute chaos. But there is way more to Chicago than just that. In fact, the city has a diverse population with all kinds of different neighborhoods. Some are upscale, some are middle class, and yes, of course, some areas are the trenches. But the point is that there is way more to the city than just that. Believe it or not, Chicago is home to some of the most expensive and wealthiest zip codes in the country, many of which are located in downtown and the north side area. On the other hand, we all know that the south side and west side have a completely different reputation, and it's been that way for a long time. In fact, we can go all the way back to the 1920s when Al Capone and the Italian
I thought he was from
mob-
Jersey. I didn't know he was from Chicago. Al
Chicago.
Capone.
He came over here. He came to the East Coast to run shit.
Okay.
Like a boss.
whole city, but we can cover that in a whole separate video. So in this video, we're gonna cover the least talked about yet possibly biggest organization to ever exist in Chicago. Bigger than the mob, GDs, and BDs combined. Welcome to the real Chicago. But before we get into it, let me run the intro.
I know they were tight. They blew up their spot, right? Why you blowing up my spot, Swamp Stories? Why you blowing up my spot? Why you blowing up my spot? Why? I said why?
Hey,
Why?
hey,
Why?
hey,
Why?
hey,
Why?
hey,
Why?
hey,
Why?
hey. Alright, stop.
When people consider Chicago, Latinos aren't necessarily what come to
Mexicans?
mind. Maybe I can just speak for myself, but honestly, I was unaware of any Latin community in the Midwest. Well, I was completely wrong. So in order for this video to make sense, let's head all the way back to the start. The first wave of Latinos came from Texas up to Chicago as far back as the 1920s.
Oh, wow.
Here's how it went. Those who worked in the steel factories lived on the south side, and those who worked in packaging went to the back of the yards area. And finally, railroad workers went to the west side. So the community grew all over the city. However, that all slowed down once California and Texas started providing better jobs. So a bad economy and terrible weather stopped the growth
terrible
for quite a
weather,
few
right.
years. However, the Latino population would pick back up in the 1950s, but this time it was a completely different group. Starting in 1950, tens of thousands of Puerto Ricans began moving to Chicago, specifically the Humboldt Park neighborhood. And it only took a few years for the neighborhood to be completely Puerto Rican. So Division Street became the center for the community with their own restaurants, corner stores,
There's
and all
Puerto
kinds
Ricans
of businesses.
in Chicago?
Tommy Boricua, put your flag in the comments below. All the Puerto Ricans, put your flag in the comments below. If you Mexican, put the comments below. If you Afghani, put the comments below the flag.
There's none of those.
We're gonna get one. Give me one Afghanistan.
But just like any society, the underground world started to form as well. And that takes us to 1954. Everything started with a man named Ramon Santos, also known as Papa King. All he wanted was money and control, so in 1954 he started the Latin Kings. And the name was not a random choice because Papa King wanted to structure his group similar to a monarchy, with kings at the top and below them are the princes and so on until you reach the foot soldiers at the bottom. His plan was to be the best organized and most discreet in the whole city, and that's the reason why to this day there is very little information known about them, even to the point where historians argue whether Papa King lived on 18th Street or on the south side. So let me break down his 3 stages of becoming a Latin king. Recruits start out at what they call the primitive stage. This is where they do physical work, if you know what I mean. But interestingly enough, Papa King implemented a high school diploma requirement to join.
Wow.
Yes, you heard that
Okay.
correctly. To be a Latin king, you technically needed a
I got
diploma.
it.
And rumors say it's because he wanted to make sure that members really wanted this life, rather than
Oh,
make
that's a good point.
That's King Tone right there.
Who that?
He ran Latin Kings. I want to say out of New York.
Oh,
Very
shoot.
powerful individual.
Rumors say it's because he wanted to make sure that members really wanted this life, rather than making an impulsive decision. For example, maybe they graduate high school and then realize they want to go to college or be a mechanic. You can argue that Papa King was looking out for the youth, or simply that he wanted to wean out the members who potentially would take the Takashi route when things get sticky. Well, once a member completes the primitive stage, they then have the choice of two stages. First, they can choose the mummy stage. This is a self-decided stage where members feel like their due diligence has been completed, but they want out. They feel like they earned their stripes and they deserve to be respectfully sent back to civilian life. A requirement to do this is usually finding a job and a wife, and then you are granted permission to leave. That was the first option, but the second option is the complete opposite. This is the new king stage, where one is officially admitted.
New
And when you become a
This
king,
is wow, this is crazy how organized this shit
Is this true or is he making this shit up?
Nah, this is crazy.
This is the new king stage,
So
where
good.
one is officially admitted. And when you become a king, you must devote your life to the group. You must eat, sleep, and breathe the kinghood. And any violation of the rules by a new king will result in a 3-minute discipline by multiple members at once. This is the original DP,
Oh, wow.
except this one does not take place on 50/50. And the last rule is color coordination. Black and yellow. The Latin kings take their colors very seriously, with the black representing darkness and evil and the yellow representing light and prosperity. Well, over years of implementing the structure and admitting new kings, they grew to thousands of members. And during the same time that they formed, so did another group called Ambrose. This is a Mexican group originating in the Pilsen neighborhood on the west side. During the 1960s, these guys were major rivals, and because of this, the whole city began taking sides. The Latin kings became close allies with the Black P
Oh,
Stones.
wow.
It's crazy because I ain't gonna point the person out, but there's one person in that picture
You know?
that I used to see all the time in the hood. I
Wow.
see him all the time.
Hold on,
And
let's
he
try to
said-
get this picture up.
Began taking sides.
He
The Latin
always had all his Latin King shit on.
Really? You remember? And then brought you back memories and
Yeah,
that?
yeah. So he was a scary individual. That's all I gotta say. Like,
Wow. That's
he walked
wild.
around neighborhoods and like nobody pretty much said anything to him. He just did whatever.
Kings became
Yo.
close allies with the Black P Stones. On the other hand, Ambrose joined together with the GDs.
Oh,
so
wow.
for the 1960s, that's how Chicago was divided. But unfortunately, most of the records on these incidents have been wiped, so we start out in 1971. Let me introduce
Gustavo
you to a
Colon.
16-year-old named Gustavo Colon, also known as Gino. And this guy was as wild and impressionable as a teenager could be. So during his primitive stage with the Kings, he was ordered to do something crazy. And that takes us to June 27th, 1971, 10 p.m. Gino and his higher-ranking friend are hanging out on Levitt Street on the west side. That's when they notice a group of 4 teens walking down the street. So Gino's friend points at one of the teenagers named Nathaniel Burr. So he orders Gino to cross the street and you know what. So Gino gets up, crosses the street, and walks up to Nathaniel. Bang.
No.
Gino runs away and heads back to his home. Later that night, he would get a knock on the door. The teens who witnessed it gave his exact description. So Gino gets arrested, and here is where things get interesting. His lawyers claim that Nathaniel Burr was a rival vice lord, not a random kid. However, nobody believed it, and Gino got 27 years.
Wow.
Now, logically, you'd think that he would be forgotten about and written off now that he can no longer help the Kings. But nope, the exact opposite would end up taking place. So let me set the context. After this incident, the Kings began falling apart. However, it had nothing to do with Gino. It had everything to do with a certain substance that makes you feel extremely elevated. And many Latin Kings fell victim to this, including the leader Ramon Santos, also known as Papa King. It got to the point where 7 members wrote a King's Manifesto addressing all of the issues. They implemented new rules, which later led to Papa King losing his title. So without a leader, the Kings wanted to promote a fearless, respected member to lead the way. And despite being 17 years old, Gino was the perfect man for the job. He became the head of the entire Latin Kings organization, all orchestrated in a 6x8 foot concrete
Wow.
cell. And if you thought what Gino did was bad, oh trust me, what he orchestrated is much worse. Under his leadership, the Latin Kings kept getting more and more bold. Gino wanted to expand the Latin Kings to the biggest and most feared in the entire country. But in order to do that, he had to let go of certain rules. So he decided to remove the Puerto Rican requirements. So instantly, the Kings expanded by the thousands. Well, just like any street organization, money is
I knew that was
extremely
showing like, yo,
important.
because I never hear about like Puerto Ricans only being part of the Latin Kings. Isn't the Latin Kings supposed to be all Hispanic people could join, right?
Well, from my era, growing up, that's what I thought. I didn't know this part of it. I didn't know you had to be Puerto Rican. I know to be a nieta, which is another, that's a Puerto Rican gang. You gotta be Puerto Rican, but that started, as far as I know, that started in jail, but in Puerto Rico.
Oh.
So that started in Puerto Rico, yeah. The nieta is a whole different faction.
And although the Kings had their hands in all kinds of underground trades, their main sum of money came from GTA-style heists. Banks, jewelry stores, you name it. The Kings did not care. And because of their extremely well-oiled machine, more times than not, they would get away free. But as we all know, cash is obsolete in large amounts. Meaning that sure, you can pay your day-to-day expenses with cash. But when it's time to make an investment or purchase a house, you need to be able to prove where the money came from. So in order to turn their money legit, the Kings began opening businesses across Chicago. Their first and main business was a corner store on Rockwell and Hirsch, and this is where they employed their family members to work the store, and honestly, that's respectable. They also opened nightclubs, car washes, restaurants, and really anything you can imagine. All this money was rolling in, but the whole time, the Kings had their eyes on one major heist, the Illinois National Guard Armory. And for those who don't know, this is a military base. Yes, an actual military base. And the reason they wanted to test it is only...
Who do they think they
Trying
are?
to rob a freaking military base?
They're like loco.
Mr. Big Stuff. Who do you think you are? You are.
This is not GTA, bro. I don't know what they thought this was.
What the fudge?
Base.
You do that shit at GTA, right?
Actual military base. And the reason they wanted to test it is only because the main Latin Kings branch is located directly across the street. April 10th, 1978. After years of planning, the Latin Kings finally have their plan set, and here it is. A king will spy on the armory all day until a military vehicle leaves the gate. And as soon as it turns the corner, they will run outside the house and steal the vehicle. At 3 in the afternoon, the truck finally leaves the gate. So they run outside the house and surround the truck. The driver makes a smart
this
decision.
This how you get federal time. Like, they didn't think that? Like, this is how you get federal. Playing with the military base?
He said, Swamp Story. They got wilder and wilder. They just didn't care. They just didn't care, bro.
So they run outside the house and surround the truck. The driver makes a smart decision and surrenders. So the Kings successfully drive it to one of their garages. And finally, the big surprise. They open the back of the truck and here's what they found. Over $100,000 worth of military equipment. Okay, that may not sound like a lot, but that's equivalent to $443,000 in today's money. And most importantly, the case was never solved. All of this was told by a former Latin king. He claims that the equipment they took is still on the streets today. This whole story
Wait,
is
this might be true though, because
Chicago
this is the 70s, right? So this might be an actual story if it was in the 70s.
What the hell?
Right, guys?
What the hell?
I know, that's one of those, right?
Yo, this is
really like GTA Online in real life. But not only were the Kings active in the streets, but behind bars as well. And this story might be the craziest of them all. And that takes us to Stateville Prison in Joliet, Illinois. And for those who don't know, this is one of the worst prisons in the country, to the point where guards usually quit due to scary environments. The Latin Kings were the main reason. So now let me set the context. A brand new officer named Lawrence Kush was admitted to guard the facility in 1989, and quickly he built an amazing reputation. That's because he did his job by the book. He didn't mess around even when his fellow guards were being sketchy, and the Latin Kings were not happy about this new guard telling them what to do. So after a while, Gino decides to call for a meeting with 3 fellow kings. He orders them to take care of Lawrence Kush, but the members are kind of unsure. Instead, the members propose fear tactics, claiming that Lawrence does not deserve this. So Gino stands up and gets in their face. He tells them that if they don't obey his order, they themselves will be on his list. So here is where they're forced to make a tough decision. It's either life in prison or being Gino's enemy. July 1st, 1989. During yard time, the three kings surround Lawrence.
Wow, killing COs.
After this incident, all three men were given life.
Yeah.
However, they agreed to tell everything because they were so disgusted by what they had done. They at least wanted to try to end the chaos that the Latin Kings were causing. So they told
Right, he got
police that Gino had ordered them to do it. And that's when...
So you dropped the ball. Why you got 6ix9ine in the video, bro?
Because he's a rat, he's saying.
Oh, okay.
Ratting, right?
They searched Gino's cell and found a long list of 30 names, all of which were guards, with Lawrence's name with an X right next to it. However, this was somehow not enough to press charges. After all, Gino was just as powerful as the warden. This situation shows that members are seen as expendable. As soon as they question an order, they may be next on the list. And that trend goes way past Chicago, specifically New York City. By 1990, the Latin Kings had taken over the Sunset Park area in Brooklyn.
So it was
New York
founded
City
in Chicago first, you're saying?
Yeah, it's based out of Chicago.
Oh, okay.
And that's what I just told you that like 40 minutes ago.
I didn't know that,
At the beginning
fool.
of the freaking documentary.
is a huge market to make money in, so it only made sense.
there's mad Boricuas
However,
out there.
the New York recruits had no idea what they had signed up for. The Latin Kings had stricter rules than the New York streets had ever seen. But on the other hand, the Chicago leaders did not know what they were getting themselves into either. As soon as they entered New York City, they were being monitored by NYPD. Every phone call,
Yeah,
every
NYPD,
transaction,
boy.
and most importantly,
Biggest gang
every
in the world.
pay. New York
Yeah, I
and
forgot who said that.
Chicago
Someone was
are
like, yo, bro, this is not New York. This is not Chicago. You can't get away with certain things. This is New York City. You're getting arrested for everything you do.
Yeah,
It's more money.
if they want you, they track you down.
Chicago, you probably can get away with an M for a couple years. But over here, you're not getting away with nothing, gang. You're going to get indicted.
Yep.
There's more money over
completely
here.
different for those of you who don't know. You can pretty much get away with anything in Chicago, and this is a known problem. On the other hand, New York
just
police
said that.
have
Did
their
you watch
city
this
on lock.
before?
They
Nah,
learn to
nah.
monitor every single move. Well, between 1992 and 1994, 7 Latin Kings lost their lives in Sunset Park. And the Kings thought that police would assume that it was rivals taking them out. Little did they know, New York police knew all about their reputation. They found out that all 7 Latin Kings were done in by other Latin Kings. And in 1994, NYPD introduced a giant Latin Kings
Rico.
33 members were all arrested and sentenced to life. And during the
wow.
trials, it was revealed that many of the members lost their lives over really small things. Simple things such as talking back to a leader, disagreeing, or not completing
So
an
they were
order
just
correctly.
fighting with each other in this gang? They didn't even like have ops like that, basically? They're
They were
saying?
in-house fighting, and the resolution was murder.
Wow, those Boricuas don't know how to get along.
Yeah, man, come on, Boricuas.
So with New York
Like,
being
check,
the first to
Boricuas on
take
the
down
set.
the Latin Kings, it was only right for Chicago to do the same. And that takes us right back to Gino Colon. After serving 26 years in
came home?
Stateville, it was finally time for Colon to get back home. The judge granted him early release because he convinced them that he had changed his life. He completed his GED, college courses, and had a job waiting for him back home. However, one day before his release, he would receive the worst possible news.
Yo,
September
they
19th,
got the cops is
1997.
dirty for that.
Wow.
They probably indicted him.
Him and his wife.
What the fuck?
Arrested.
A day
Received the
before he
worst
comes
possible
home.
news.
They did him
September
dirty.
19th,
probably died in
1997.
prison.
Gino Colon and his wife are arrested for 12 felonies. Apparently, his wife was running a $6 million a year operation in Chicago.
Wow.
Here's how it worked. Gino would call her and have her follow his directions. Then she would relay his orders to the Latin Kings in Chicago. You may be wondering how the police knew about this. Well, he literally said all of this over a monitored jail phone. So Gino Colon and his wife were both sentenced. Since then, she has gotten out, but he is still serving his sentence. I really think that this was Chicago police sending a point. They wanted to let the Latin Kings know that they in fact run the city. And sure, that sounds nice on paper and maybe reassures a lot of residents. But in reality, it's far from the truth. This did not stop anything. From 1997 on, the Latin Kings have expanded farther and farther. They now have a presence in 41 states with between 25 and 30,000 members.
But you don't hear
However,
about them,
these
bro.
days they move
And it's
to
hard. Maybe I'm just being like in a bubble, you know what I'm saying? My little bubble, because if it's not rap music, I don't think it's a game. Like if they don't have a lit rapper from their set, it's hard to be like,
Right.
to picture it. But like,
I think they move more discreet now too. They probably drop the colors, like not drop the colors, but more discreet. You know what I mean? Instead of like, cause it's kind of dumb to walk around showing your colors and then you get caught up with stuff and they identify you through colors and tats.
Because you hear about the Trinitarios, the Dominicano gang, and they rep green, the Trinitario.
Yeah. But
So
I think Latin King also, I don't know if it's in the documentary, they did make a push to be a little more organized and be more civil in the sense of trying to help the youth. I think there was a movement of that.
Creed, so very little is known about their operations. But trust me, they're around. In fact, they're all over the world, from Ecuador to Mississippi to California and even to Spain. However, it's more so about money making than any sort of conflict. Well, that's the case for most of the world. But in Chicago, tensions sparked up in May and June of 2020. While all the protests were taking place, the Latin Kings chose to defend their neighborhood. From the Little Village to Humboldt Park and even spots on the south side, the Kings made sure to be tough when it's time to defend their neighborhood. And that confrontation has caused issues with the GDs, BDs, and folks. But on a positive note, the Kings have an up-and-coming rapper out of Chicago named King Ace. But that's gonna do it for this episode of Swamp Stories. If you enjoyed the video,
writing.
I knew I wasn't bugging, but the Latin Kings are not that prevalent, like, because you would hear about, like, YouTube documentaries about them or gang stuff. I guess they calmed down, which is a good thing.
They did no rioting. I know in Washington Heights, all the Dominicans didn't allow no rioting either.
Yeah, they didn't play
All
that.
the storefronts, they shut it down. They're like, y'all can riot, but y'all not rioting our part.
Is JTV, Fear of Gus channel?
We out of here.
And I know how it gets, so I gotta stay low, now move my knot. I don't trust no nigga, I don't trust no man, ain't no friends, everybody get shot. You never know how nigga gon' throw, I'm hitting the flow with a couple of shots. You better move, you better duck, either way to go, you'll get got.